You've just lost your CRA audit. They sent you a notice of reassessment. You owe them money, maybe a lot of money, and you're wondering, is it over? Did I lose? The answer is no. Here's the thing. About 62% of objections filed in the year 2024 to 2025 were either fully won or settled in the taxpayer's favor. So you still have a real shot. My name is Sunny Jaggi. I'm a Canadian CPA with master's degree in taxation. I've been doing this for 15 years. And I'm telling you, an audit loss is not the end. Here's what happens next. A failed audit doesn't mean you lost. It means the auditor took their shot and now it's your turn. Inside CRA, there's a whole other process called objections. Different people, different mandate, and in my experience, they're often more reasonable than the auditors. In this video, I'm breaking down the exact objection process, the deadlines you can't miss, what happens to the money you owe while you're still fighting, and the 3 reasons you might still win. Let's go. First, you need to know the deadline. And this is critical because if you miss it, it's over. If you're a corporation, you have 90 days from the date of the notice of reassessment to file your objection. That's it, no wiggle room. If you're an individual, it's a bit more flexible. You have the later of 90 days from the notice date or 1 year from the tax filing date, but don't count on that extra year. File as soon as you can. What if you miss the deadline? You can apply for an extension, but here's the catch. You have to apply within 1 year of the original deadline. After that, it's over. CRA will consider your extension request if you have a valid reason, or there were circumstances beyond your control, but you need to act fast. Missing deadlines is one of the most expensive mistakes you can make. Once that window closes, your option is tax court. Different process, higher cost, longer timelines. So don't wait. Now here's what happens to the money you owe while you're fighting. If you file an objection, CRA usually won't force you to pay while the dispute is ongoing. They pause collections until 90 days after they decide on your objection. That means they won't come after you right away. But, and this is important, there are exceptions. If you owe payroll taxes or GST, HST that you were supposed to withhold and remit, CRA can still come after you for those. If CRA thinks you're a flight risk, they can still pursue collections. And if you're a large corporation, meaning you and your related companies have over $10 million in taxable capital, you have to pay 50% of the disputed amount upfront, no exception. But here's the part most people miss. Even if the collections are paused, the interest does not stop. It keeps piling up on the full amount you owe. So if you lose the objection later, you'll owe the tax plus all the interest that accumulated while you were fighting. That's why I tell my clients, if you have the cash, consider paying anyway. It's a pure risk management. Now, if you win the objection, fully or partially, CRA has to refund you, and there's good news. They will refund you with interest. So you're not leaving money on the table if you pay early. So let's talk about timelines, because this is where a lot of people get frustrated. CRA publishes their average processing time, and I'll give you the real numbers from October 2025. For low complexity cases, simple issues, small dollar amounts, it takes about 128 days or about 4 months. For medium complexity cases, where most business owners dispute falls here, it's 335 days or almost 1 year. And for the high complexity case, large corporations, complicated transactions, international tax, you're looking at about 690 days or more. That's nearly 2 years. And here's the reality. Those are averages. CRA has a backlog. Most medium complexity objections being assessed today were filed back in September 2024. So expect months before anyone even picks up your file. Now, part of the reason for the backlog is that CRA is doing more audits than ever, and not every auditor has the same level of experience, training, or talent. Sometimes things get missed, sometimes the facts aren't fully understood, and that's where objections come in. So what happens once CRA reviews your objections? They have 3 options. CRA can either stick with the auditor, so meaning you lose, or CRA can cancel the reassessment, meaning you win, or they can meet you in the middle, Maybe the auditor reassessed you for $500,000 and appeal settles it for $250,000. It's a partial win. In my experience, middle ground is where a lot of real-world disputes end. Appeals has the authority to settle the middle ground number, and they often do, especially when the facts are not black and white. And that's why I say appeals is often more reasonable. Their mandate is to conduct a fair and impartial review, not to defend the auditor's position. Now, here's something important. Not every issue is worth fighting. Just because you lost an audit doesn't mean you should automatically file an objection on every single point. There's cost, there's time, there's effort, there's headache, then there's peace of mind. You need to weigh the feasibility. Is this even worth pursuing? A good tax specialist will help you figure this out. They'll let you know the lay of the land. What's winnable, what's not, what are the risks? And sometimes just because of the time involved, the cost of fighting might be just too high. Let me be real about the cost. Most objections can't be done on fixed fees. People charge based on their time spent. Hourly rates can vary between $250 an hour to $500 per hour. That's pretty standard. And they usually charge a retainer of about $5,000 to $10,000 upfront, depending on the issue at hand. Once the objection goes out and when it comes back, there will be some more back and forth, and there might be more cost. So, if it's a small ticket item, maybe you lost a deduction worth $2,000 in taxes, maybe you'll just let it go. It's not worth the money. But if it's a huge issue, like CRA came back with $1 million of undeclared income and you feel like they're completely out of lunch, then it's worth fighting. And if you feel strongly that you have legs to stand on this, you go after it. So, why should you bother filing an objection? Because there are 3 reasons you might still win. First, the facts were wrong. Maybe the auditor didn't have all the documents, maybe they misunderstood the timeline, or maybe you just didn't explain it well. At objections, you get a second chance to fix the factual record. You can submit new documents, clarify what happened, explain the full story. Let me give you an example. I had a client who got reassessed because CRA reclassified their subcontractor status as an employee. The auditor looked at the facts and said that these people are not independent contractors, they're employees, you control them. But at the objection stage, we showed them that they're separate invoices, they have multiple clients, they use their own tools, and CRA backed off. Now, why does this matter? Because if those workers were classified as employees, the client would owe payroll taxes, CPP, EI contributions, all retroactively. And that's tens of thousands of dollars plus interest and penalties. So if they're a contractor, none of that applies. So getting the facts right saved them a huge tax bill and interest and penalties. Second reason, the law was applied incorrectly. Maybe the auditor took a rigid interpretation of a rule, or maybe they didn't even consider a key provision. Appeals officers are often more experienced and they have the authority to reinterpret the law. If the auditor got it wrong, appeals can fix this. Third reason, the relationship simply broke down or there was a credibility issue. Sometimes the audit just goes sideways. Maybe because the auditor did not believe your explanation, maybe the relationship soured, or maybe the auditor had a bias. At objections, you get fresh set of eyes, a different person, and that can make all the difference, especially when the evidence isn't perfect and the outcome hinges on judgment. Here's an example. A client got reassessed because CRA thought they were deferring income improperly. The auditor didn't understand how the industry worked. Invoicing cycles, payment terms, industry norms. At objections, we walk the appeals officer through how the business actually operates, and they got it. CRA vacated the reassessment. Okay, so what do you do now? Here's your action plan. First, file a comprehensive objection. Don't just say, I disagree. Explain why. Describe every issue you want appeals to review. Specify the relief you want. Quantify it. Calculate it. Provide them the facts and the reasons that support your position. For a large corporation, this is mandatory, but even if you're not a large corporation, you should do it anyway. Because if you don't raise an issue now, you might lose the right to raise it later at tax court. And file online if you can. CRA has a portal, My Account for individuals, My Business Account for corporations. It's much faster. You get a confirmation that they received it. Second, decide whether to pay. If you have cash, savings, and the reassessment is huge, Paying can save you the interest. If you can't pay, that's fine. Collections are paused. Just know that the interest is still running. Third, expect a long wait. If you're in the medium complexity bucket, which most business owners are, you're looking at least a year. So don't hold your breath. And here's the thing, if you handled the audit yourself and it did not go well, maybe it's time to get someone professional. Not every CPA is trained in complex audits, just like how every doctor is not a heart surgeon. Tax specialists, CPAs who focus on audits and objections have their own training, own experience. That's why they do what they do. A good specialist will help you figure out which battles to pick, what are the costs, whether it's worth pursuing them. If you want the full checklist for surviving a CRA audit, I have put it together at theadvisorstable.com. It's the same one I use with my clients. It will walk you through exactly what to include in your objections and how to set yourself up for a win. And if you found this helpful, drop a comment, let me know. Have you ever been through a CRA audit or objections? What was your experience? I read every comment and I'd love to hear your story. And if you want more tax strategies like this, hit subscribe. New videos are up every week. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.